The sun bled low over the prairie, spilling rust-red light across the dirt street of Dry Creek. Dust clung to the air like a curse, every bootstep stirring ghosts of the day. Inside the saloon where whiskey drowned men faster than water, a young woman bent to scrub the warped floorboards. Her name was Clara, barely 20, shoulders tight with the weight of survival. Above her, cards slapped the table and glass shattered. Royce Harlan, her stepfather, a man soaked in liquor and greed, leaned back in his chair with a grin twisted like barbed wire. His voice was a whip. "You think that deed's yours, girl?" His boot scraped across the floor, stopping inches from her hands. "Your mama's gone. That land's mine now." Clara didn't look up. Her rag moved in slow circles, though her jaw was stone. "It was hers," she whispered. Royce's laugh cut like a saw blade. He seized her wrist, yanking her upright. The rag fell, wet and filthy, to the floor. "You'll regret this one day," he hissed, whiskey burning on his breath. His free hand drew back, and the slap cracked through the saloon like a pistol shot. The men at the tables looked away, too numb or too afraid to interfere. Clara staggered but did not fall. A thin line of blood traced her lip. Her eyes, though glassy, did not break. "You can steal my horse," she said, voice shaking, "but you'll never steal her land." Royce's face darkened. Pride stung like a wounded animal. He shoved her aside, grabbed the bottle from the table, and stormed toward the door. The hinges groaned as it slammed, rattling the lanterns against the wall. Outside, his boots crushed the brittle autumn leaves scattered in the street, the sound sharp in the quiet. He mounted her horse, jerking the reins hard. From the doorway, Clara stood in the shadows, watching him disappear into the bleeding horizon. The lantern above her flickered, flame choking on its on smoke, but it did not go out. Night spread across the flats like a black sheet, the moon a pale coin half hidden by drifting clouds. Clara rode hard, the family deed tucked inside her coat, breath turning to silver in the cold. Every hoofbeat echoed the words Royce had spat at her. "You'll regret this one day." A rustle of brush, the sudden snort of a horse. She turned just as Royce emerged from the darkness, a silhouette of rage on horseback. "Thought you could run, girl?" His voice cracked the night. "That land's mine by blood and bone." Clara's heart hammered. "It was Mama's. It stays with me." He swung from his saddle, boots striking hard earth. The smell of whiskey hit first, sharp as a blade. "You don't get to choose." She tried to wheel her horse, but his hand shot out, yanking her down. Gravel tore at her palms as she hit the ground. Royce dragged her through the scrub, rope in hand. "Coyotes'll finish what I start," he muttered, binding her wrists with rough hemp that bit deep. "Royce, please, save your breath." The desert wind answered for him, a low, mournful whistle through the sage. He shoved her against a twisted mesquite tree, tying the rope to a branch. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Sun'll be up soon," he said, eyes glinting with cruel delight. "I'll be back for the deed when you've learned to listen." He swung into the saddle. The horse reared, hooves sparking against stone, and then he was gone, swallowed by moonlight and dust. Silence fell heavy. Coyotes cried far off, their calls a chorus of hunger. The cold gnawed at her skin. Clara twisted her wrists, the rope scraping raw. Splinters of bark cut her fingers, but she worked anyway, jaw clenched against the pain. Blood slicked the hemp. Narration drifted like a harsh prayer. The desert keeps no pity. It respects only the relentless. A gust of wind rattled the mesquite. Stars turned overhead. Clara braced her foot against the trunk and pulled until the last knot gave way with a muffled snap. She staggered free, wrists bleeding, breath ragged but steady. Far off, dawn hinted at the edge of the world, a faint silver promise. Clara lifted her chin to it, eyes burning with resolve. "The land stays mine," she whispered to the empty night. And she began to walk. First light crawled across the horizon, a thin silver blade cutting through the desert dark. Clara stumbled forward, sand caked on her torn palms, every step a whisper of defiance. The cold still clung to her bones, but the sky promised warmth if she could last until sunrise. A low rumble broke the silence, hoofbeats, steady and measured. She froze, heart kicking against her ribs. Out of the pale dawn emerged a lone rider, tall in the saddle, his coat a dark silhouette against the light. Elias Boone, broad-shouldered, hair streaked with gray, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He drew his horse to a slow stop, scanning the barren flats. "Miss?" His voice carried like gravel rolling in a creek bed. "You hurt?" Clara swayed, the world tilting. I'm fine," she rasped, though her knees buckled beneath her. Boone dismounted in one practiced motion. His boots crunched against the crusted earth as he approached, lantern swinging from his saddle, casting a warm circle over the cold ground. He knelt, steady and calm. "Easy now," he said, wrapping his duster around her shoulders. "You're freezing." "I have to keep moving," she whispered. "Not like this, you don't." He lifted her gently as though she were made of something breakable but worth saving. The scent of horse and leather filled her senses, strangely safe. She felt the rough rhythm of his heartbeat against her cheek as he settled her onto the saddle before him. The narrator's voice settled low, like a breeze through tall grass. In a land that devoured the weak, a single act of mercy could blaze brighter than any sun. Boone's ranch came into view just as the dawn burst wide, a weathered spread of cedar and stone, a single lantee, urn glowing against the gray. The sound of cattle lowed in the distance, steady as a hymn. He eased her down, guiding her inside the warm cabin. The door's hinges groaned, then shut out the wind. Firelight danced across rough-hewn walls, painting them gold. "You're safe here," he said, meeting her eyes. "No man raises a hand to a soul under my roof." Clara exhaled, tension spilling from her shoulders. For the first time since nightfall, she believed it. Outside, the prairie wind softened, carrying the faint scent of mesquite smoke, like a promise that the worst had not yet won. Twilight draped the ranch in long, stretching shadows. The fire in the hearth cast flickering patterns across the walls, dancing over Clara's tired face. She moved quietly, tending to the small chores Boone had asked of her, feeding the chickens, stacking kindling, each motion a fragile claim to normalcy. Then came the sound of hooves on hard-packed dirt, slow, deliberate. Her stomach knotted. She knew that rhythm, that swagger. Royce. Boone stepped beside her, broad and steady, boots crunching leaves as he approached the cabin door. "Someone's out there," he muttered, voice low but hard, hand resting near his rifle. The door creaked open, and Royce's shadow fell across the threshold, a grin splitting his face like a knife. "Thought I'd find you here," he snarled, eyes glittering with malice. "And the deed? Hand it over, girl." Clara's hands tightened around the warm rim of a lantern. "Not tonight," she said, voice small but fierce. Boone stepped forward, crushing dry leaves beneath his boots, the sound sharp, deliberate. "She stays," he said, tone flat, like iron drawn from the earth. "And you leave, Royce." Royce's laugh was bitter, spilling over the porch like poison. "You'll regret this one day," he spat, his gaze flicking to the rifle resting against Boone's shoulder. The wind shifted, ruffling, i.e. the prairie grass in tense whispers. Boone's eyes did not waver. Royce's grin faltered. He could sense the difference now, the calm certainty of a man who had seen too much to be intimidated. "Always so righteous," Royce muttered, spinning his horse. His boots kicked up dust, the dry scent of sand and crushed leaves rising in a bitter swirl. He rode off into the darkening horizon, each hoofbeat fading but echoing like a threat. Clara exhaled, the lantern light trembling in her hands. Her chest heaved with relief and lingering fear. Boone placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding. Narrator voice carried over the fading hoofbeats. In the west, evil prowled under moon and shadow, but courage often came quietly, like a man crushing the dust beneath his boots, standing firm when all else threatened to yield. Clara glanced toward the horizon where Royce had vanished, her lips pressed into a thin line, resolve hardening. She would not falter, not now, not ever. The night swallowed the last hints of threat, leaving only the crackling fire, the lantern's warm glow, and a young woman learning that courage could be as solid as stone beneath her feet. The morning sun spilled gold across the ranch, cutting through the chill that still lingered in the corners of the cabin. Clara sat on the porch steps, hands wrapped around a steaming tin cup, eyes fixed on the distant horizon where the plains met sky. Her mind replayed the events of the night, Royce's threats, Boone's unshakable stance, but she felt the first stirrings of hope since he had dragged her from the desert. A sudden clatter of boots on the dirt road snapped her attention toward the gate. A rider approached, dust spiraling in the wind like smoke from a distant fire. Atop his horse sat Sheriff Calder, badge gleaming faintly in the sunlight, a rifle slung over his shoulder. His presence carried authority, quiet but unyielding, like the land itself. "Morning, miss," he called, tipping his hat. "Word reached us that trouble rode this way last night." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Boone stepped forward, dust crunching under his boots, and spoke first. "This girl's had enough trouble. I need the law here if Royce tries anything." The sheriff nodded, eyes scanning the horizon, then landing on Clara. "You have nothing to fear here," he said. "Boone's place is under watch, and I'll see to it that justice moves. Slow it may be in the west, but it comes." Clara drew a shaky breath, voice stronger than she expected. He tried to take the deed, threatened me, said I'd regret standing up to him." Sheriff Calder dismounted, boots crunching on the porch boards. "That's why we're here. You've done right by holding fast. No one has the right to steal your inheritance, or your life." Narration flowed over the scene, low and deliberate. In a land where the sun scorched the earth and men's hearts often matched the dust in hardness, there were still those who upheld the law. One act of courage could summon allies in the most unlikely forms, and hope, fragile though it seemed, could grow strong enough to shield the innocent. Boone placed a reassuring hand on Clara's shoulder, and she felt the weight of her fear lift slightly. Outside, the prairie wind carried the faint scent of mesquite and morning dew, promising that justice was no longer a distant dream, but a tangible force riding steadily toward them. "Thank you," Clara whispered, voice soft but unwavering. "You did all the hard work," Boone replied. "I'm just here to make sure no one walks away with what's not theirs." The sheriff gave a firm nod, tipping his hat again before turning his horse toward the road. Clara watched him ride away, feeling a spark of hope ignite, a silent vow forming. She would not let Royce, or any man, steal her life again. Night fell like a velvet shroud over Boone's ranch, swallowing the fields in darkness. Lanterns flickered in the cabin windows, casting long, anxious shadows across the Odin porch. Clara moved quietly, checking locks and shuttering windows, her hands trembling just enough to remind her that Royce had not yet been defeated. A sudden clatter of hooves on stone-strewn dirt made her freeze. The wind carried the faint, acrid scent of smoke and gunpowder. She peered into the darkness and saw them, 3 shadowy figures riding hard, torches ablaze like angry comets against the night sky. Royce led the charge, his face twisted in fury, eyes glinting with the promise of destruction. "Boone!" Clara's voice cut through the night, sharp and urgent. "They're here!" Boone was already moving, rifle in hand, boots crunching against the dry leaves outside. "Stay inside," he ordered, voice low and steady, the calm of a man who had faced death before. "I've got this." The gang rode closer, torches bouncing in the darkness. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the distant hills. Horses screamed, hooves striking sparks from stone. Clara crouched behind the cabin door, heart hammering in sync with every echoing shot. Narration rose over the chaos. The night had turned predator, but courage, tempered by fear, was a sharper weapon. Every heartbeat was a hammer. Every breath, a borrowed mercy. Boone fired steadily, each shot precise, forcing the outlaws to falter. Clara grabbed a second rifle, her hands shaking but sure. "I can help," she said, determination steel under her fear. "Keep low," Boone barked, firelight flickering across his stern face. "Aim only when you have to." The outlaws hesitated, Royce screaming orders, frustrated by Boone's unyielding defense. Sparks from torches lit the dust-filled air, illuminating Clara's resolve. She squeezed the trigger once, twice, her first real act of defiance, and the sound rang louder than her fear. The narrator's voice threaded through the gunfire. Even in the darkest hour, the heart that refuses to break can shine through like dawn cracking over the desert horizon. By the time the first hints of dawn brushed the edges of the prairie, the night's assault had waned. Royce and his gang retreated, scattered by Boone's steady hand and Clara's newfound courage. The ranch, battered but unbroken, lay in the pale light of morning, promising that hope, however tested, was never lost. The first gray light of dawn crept over the prairie, cutting through the smoke and dust that still clung to Boone's ranch. Clara's hands were raw from loading rifles, her heart still pounding from the night's chaos. She stood on the porch watching the horizon when the distant thrum of hooves cut through the quiet. Sheriff Calder appeared, riding hard with 2 deputies at his side, dust trailing like ghosts behind their horses. The sharp metallic glint of badges caught the rising sun. Clara's chest tightened with relief. Justice was finally riding toward them. "Hold your fire," the sheriff called as they approached. "Hands where I can see them." Royce and his gang froze mid-step, torches flickering in the wind. Royce's face twisted in rage and disbelief. "You'll regret this one day," he shouted, shaking his fists, but the deputies circled, closing in with unyielding precision. Boone stepped from the porch, boots crunching dry leaves underfoot, rifle at his side but lowered. "It's over, Royce. Not tonight. Not ever again." Narration cut over the scene, low and deliberate. In the West, law often came slow, but when it arrived it carved its mark deep. Courage alone could only carry one so far. The hand of justice was the final shield against the darkness. The deputies dismounted, moving with practiced efficiency. Royce struggled, cursing, fists flailing, but the sheriff's rope wrapped tight around his wrists. His gang followed, all bound, their torches extinguished in the early light. Clara exhaled, shoulders sagging with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Boone placed a firm hand on her back, steadying her. "You did good," he said quietly. "You stood when most would have fallen." Royce spat in the dirt, chest heaving, defeated. Boone's eyes met his, calm but unyielding. "The law rides with us now. Your threats end here." The narrator's voice lingered over the qui.